Hi everyone, welcome back to Plant Boy. My name is Kade and today we are going to be taking a look at the Sansevieria Ehrenbergii. Ehrenbergii? I don't know. It's the samurai dwarf snake plant. Very, very interesting and unique snake plant here. Definitely not the traditional snake plant that you think of whenever you hear the name. You certainly think of something that is more along these terms, something that is more kind of pencil shaped, very long, and kind of flat leaved. And you of course have your more like cylindrical forms that have these more like tubular foliage. This is the starfish Sansevieria. Or you also have like the bird's nest Sansevieria as well. These are all in the same family. And this, the samurai dwarf, actually to me speaks more towards the bird's nest form and that kind of rosette forming pattern, but it also has that kind of cylindrical property of having that really, really thick foliage that is unique to both the cylindrica and the samurai dwarf here. So sorry if I lost you there if you're new to Sansevieria, but this is a more rare Sansevieria that is thought to have originated in Africa. So keep that in mind as we go through this care guide. You will find a lot of similarities with this snake plant to how you would care for all of your other snake plants as well. There's really nothing unique for this snake plant that you need to understand. If you already know how to care for a snake plant in general, you definitely should not have a problem caring for this guy. Snake plants are one of the very resilient and very hard to kill plant varieties, and that is due to their water storage capabilities because of their very thick and succulent-like foliage and just the hardy nature of the plant due to its evolution coming from a very dry, arid climate in Africa. So keeping that in mind, you really want to make sure whenever you're watering your plant, you are only doing so whenever the soil is completely dry. I recently picked up this snake plant today, and we can see here, as well as in the following clip, that the roots of this plant are actually getting a little orange, and they're definitely not vibrant white, but they aren't, you know, mushy or anything like that. So this kind of seems to me like potentially early stages of rot, just due to overwatering and keeping the soil a little too moist. And that's not really something too alarming. However, now that this plant is in my home, I'm going to do my best to make sure that I'm really allowing the soil to dry out. With snake plants, the lighting conditions vary quite greatly actually. These plants can tolerate pretty low light conditions. They're not going to thrive in low light by any means, as are really any plants, but they definitely can survive for longer periods of times in lower light conditions in a darker room or darker corner or something like that. If you really want to allow your snake plant to thrive, you want to make sure that you are giving it lots of bright indirect light or even full sun. These plants can tolerate lots and lots of sunlight. The only thing I would say is that you might want to consider hardening these plants off prior to doing so. I would not recommend taking any plant, even a very resilient snake plant, from a very shaded area and putting it into full sun overnight. You want to kind of gradually change its environment so it does not shock the plant. So, like I said, if you want your snake plant to thrive, keep it in very bright indirect light to even some bright direct light, and they will do very well for you. Although if you don't have a whole lot of light, these guys can also be a relatively good choice. They just aren't going to be very prolific, and they're not going to grow nearly as fast as if you supply them with a lot of light. Fertilizing your snake plant is not really necessary. If I were you, I would use something natural that is an all-purpose fertilizer, something a little higher in the nitrogen content, such as a fish emulsion or a worm casting would be great. If you are okay with synthetic fertilizer, something like a 5-5-5 or a 10-10-10 NPK synthetic fertilizer would be just fine as well. Just make sure that you are only doing so through through the growing season, and doing so relatively sparingly. Follow the directions on the specific product that you have if you are using a synthetic fertilizer especially, and making sure that you are diluting that product very greatly to avoid any kind of salt buildup or fertilizer burn due to excessive minerals in the soil that are going to shock the roots. Humidity for snake plants can be a little detrimental if you are not careful. If you are someone that has a terrarium and you want to find plants to put in there, snake plants are not going to be your first choice. Like I said, these plants are thought to have originated in a very arid climate in Africa where there's not a whole lot of humidity. So if you put these plants in a super humid environment, they are probably not going to do the best. These plants have a lot of water and mineral storage and only need to be watered whenever they are dried out. So if you are keeping these in a very, very humid and moist climate, I don't think that they're going to last very long for you. There are definitely better plants out there for you. That being said, these plants are going to be ideal for someone with a wide array of light conditions and lower humidity preferably. And as for propagation, snake plants reproduce via pups. They grow rhizomally, which means that they spread underneath the soil surface, and then once they reach usually the corner of a pot, they will push up a pup out of the soil. And we can actually see that here with this Bantel sensation Sansevieria, which is kind of like this cream white variegated snake plant. And you can see that it has a pup growing right here in the soil, and this will eventually grow up into a stalk just like this. And if I wanted to propagate this and create a separate plant, I would do so by either taking a knife and cutting down into the soil there, but that could cause unnecessary damage. I would most likely pull this guy out of its pot, pull apart the root ball, and snip off that pup as far back as close to the mother plant as possible. That way you get as much root growth from the pup itself as possible to maximize your chances of propagating the plant. That is going to be no different than either a bird's nest Sansevieria that we looked at earlier, or even something like a more rosette forming, or however you would classify this. You can actually see, I'll pull this out of its pot, maybe not the best idea, but you can actually see this plant here, this bird's nest fern, actually does have a pup coming up over here. So over a period of time, this is certainly going to do the same thing. I will keep an eye out. Probably next year I will get a pup out of this guy, and we will see what to do from there. So yeah, everyone, I think we just about covered all of the bases for the Samurai Dwarf Sansevieria. Super interesting snake plant. Definitely caught my eye whenever I first saw it. I wasn't entirely sure what it was, but I happened to stumble upon this plant, I think on Logie's Longhouse Greenhouse website, and I was like, oh, I just bought that. So kind of serendipitous to figure out what I actually purchased. I had no idea. Sometimes it happens. But yeah, everyone, let me know if you have any questions on the Samurai Dwarf specifically, or if you would like to see any kind of topics covered specifically. I will see you all in the next video. Thank you very, very much for the continued support. I do appreciate it. And keep on growing, y'all. I'll see you later.